Okay, a bit of a long one. I anticipate this video to be long. So this book's 100 pages longer than the last book of the series, and the last book of the series, the video I made, was 40 minutes long. Hopefully this one won't be that long. So this is The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu, or Liu Cixin. I don't know Chinese or Mandarin, so I don't know how to pronounce these names. Anyway, so this is book 2 of the series that I think is called Remembrance of Earth's Past. I don't think the series name is ever actually... Oh, yeah, the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy. It literally says it right in the book. Anyways, yeah, so this is book 2, which is 100 pages more than book 1, and book 3 is 100 pages more than book 2. So it all rounds out to a 1,000 page trilogy, at least in this format. So yeah, so first thing I noticed was, maybe this is just coming right off the back of reading Fitzgerald, who is obviously an English speaker, but I found the dialogue in this to be very unnatural. That's not a great word. Robotic. Like the dialogue didn't seem to me like how people would actually speak to each other. But my guess is that that's a translation, not error, but issue. Like when you're translating a book, you can translate it directly, but some things are going to be lost in translation. The Mandarin language, sentence structure, and could be so different from English that translating it to English makes it seem this way. Or it could be a cultural thing where people in China, this is how people in China actually do communicate with each other, and I'm just not picking up on that and thinking it's strange and difficult because, not difficult, but different because I'm not Chinese. Anyways, so I have 6 pages of notes to make sure I don't forget anything, because a lot happens in this book. So I read the first one 7 years ago or something like that, and then I reread it just at the end of last year. And I don't know why it took me a while to get around to the second one. But anyways, I find this one, I think I like this one more than the second one. I don't know if the writer grew as a writer or what, but it did feel different, in a good way. Yeah, so like I said, it did have that sort of awkward dialogue that I was like, people don't talk like this to each other. But it also had lots of very poetic prose, not constantly, but there were times when characters were introspective or were, what's the opposite of that? Introspective? Anyways, characters would be thinking about things, or about beauty, about the universe, about life, philosophy, and there would be these beautiful poetic passages and lines that I don't want to sound ignorant, but to me felt very like Eastern Asian, like lots of metaphors using nature, and lots of descriptive flowery words describing flowers and nature and snow and moonlight and beauty and all that sort of thing. Yeah, which was pretty cool. So yeah, this book, it felt to me like it was almost 2 books in one. There's a very stark dividing line in the story between, chronologically, between sort of picking up in the present day right after the first book ended, and then a huge time skip, and it's almost it is a totally different setting, temporally, not geographically. Well, even then it is still. Anyways, it did feel very much like 2. There are 2 sections to the book, and when you're reading one, you're in a different world than when you're reading the other, which is the point, I guess. But anyways, so it starts with a flashback to this character. See, again, character names, you'll have to forgive me. Yi Wenji, who was the one in the first book, the woman who alerted Trisolaris to Earth's location and said, come kill us all. I hate humanity. Make it all end. She was at the grave of her daughter with this Professor Luo Ji, we'll say his name is. And he's a sociologist, and she was like, "Hey, you should study cosmic sociology." He's like, "What? That's not a real thing." She's like, "Yeah, study this is the societies of the galaxy." And like, he's like, "But we have no evidence of alien life." She's like, "You should still do it, just based on these two axioms." And this is important. So life expands exponentially and grows exponentially, and two, the universe is finite and has finite resources. She said, based on those two things, you should be able to create sort of the foundations for something that it could be called cosmic sociology. Anyway, so she says this to him. That's sort of the prologue to the book, and it starts with an ant, because the last one ended with the Trisolarans telling everyone that we are bugs, telling humans that they are bugs. Anyways, so that's the strange prologue that has major significance to the whole plot. So we cut to the present, where society is trying to deal with the fact that these sophons exist, these proton-sized supercomputers that are preventing theoretical physics from advancing. So human science has hit a wall. They call it the sophon wall, where we can't explore and learn about the universe beyond that. So all we have is whatever technology we currently have and whatever technology we can develop from the current science. So human development has been stunted. However, there is still much that could be done with the current level of physics and science. There's still a lot of technologies that can be developed. But the Trisolaran fleet is on the way with the intention of exterminating the human race. They're 450 years away, so this book starts with how are they going to deal with that. And the solution that the UN comes up with is something called the Wall Facer program. So Wall Facer, I believe the word comes from a term used for Buddhist monks or priests or something. I think it's Buddhism, where it's these people who they face a wall so that they're cut off from the rest of the world. It makes me think of Plato's cave, but intentional, and not. I mean, it's nothing to the cave, but like the same thing where they're so cut off from the world that their brain isn't bothered by external stimuli. They can focus on their own thoughts and whatnot. So this wall facer program is because the sophons can see everything that people are writing, see everything that people are saying to each other. They have, like, all of humanity's plans are laid bare. And so to prepare for this incoming fleet, they want to find a way to plan that the sophons can't determine, and the only thing the sophons can't determine is people's thoughts. So the plan is to create these wall facers, these individuals who come up with plans on their own, and the sophons won't know what those plans are because they won't share them with humanity. But that's, I mean, it's kind of a big deal placing that much trust in individuals to make sure that they have the humanity's best interest at heart, but also that they are capable of coming up with a plan to save humanity. So there's 4 wall facers that are chosen. There's I got their names down: Diaz, Tyler, Hines, and Luoji, representing the first, second, and third worlds and various different things. But these are people who are basically given absolute power. They can do anything. They can request any amount of resources that the world can have or has. They can, whatever they need. They don't have to. They can't be questioned because it's all part of the plan. They can't reveal the plan, or else the sophons will know, and then the Trisolarans will know. So they're totally cut off from humanity, but humanity has to obey their every word. Now, there are oversight committees to make sure that there's no harm to humans done, and that their resource expenditure is not so severe as to be impossible. So it's kind of a good idea, I guess, except for the fact that humans are fallible. So putting this much power in people, like more than the absolute monarchs of early modern Europe had, is kind of scary. But I think it is kind of a neat idea. if you can get the right people to do it, and if you can actually go along with their plan, no matter how crazy and outrageous it seems. And that, I think that's where the struggle lies. Is they have the wall facers have plans, but immediately everyone's questioning them. The authorities, the UN, militaries, they're always questioning these people. Like, what are you doing? Like, why do you need this? Why do you need that? Like, oh, you're not really helping out, which defeats the whole purpose of the wall facer project. Anyways, yeah. So I'll go over the three wall facers who fail. So the first one is Tyler, who there's Tyler and Diaz, who both of them seem to be bad wall facers to me, because it seems to me that they're just like, their plans are very obvious, and they're not coming up with secret plans that they're keeping from the Trisolarans. What they're doing is just using the power to do what they can to save humanity. But it seems like their solutions are really obvious, and they're just using it as a way to sort of have the power to save the world, and not coming up with a secret plan to save the world, to manipulate the Trisolarans. Another thing about the Trisolarans is that they communicate via thought, so their thoughts are visible and apparent to every other Trisolaran around them, so their society doesn't have deceit or lying or subterfuge or anything. So that's why, part of the reason why this wall facer plan was supposed to work, because the Trisolarans can't really comprehend subterfuge and lying and deception. So that's sort of the one advantage humanity has, and this wall facer plan was meant to exploit that. Anyway, so this first guy, Tyler, he wants to create kamikaze pilots. He wants to build a fleet of a whole bunch of tiny little fighters and have them carry nukes and crash them into the enemy fleet and destroy the fleet. And so he goes to Japan and tries to hey, you guys had kamikaze pilots in the Second World War. We should, or the Asia Pacific War. We should revitalize that program. And they're like, no, that's a horrible idea. Why would you do that? That's very offensive. And then he goes to Afghanistan. And it's funny because this book was written before, obviously before, not Saddam Hussein. Wow, Bin Laden. What's his name? Something Bin Laden. I can't remember his name, which I guess is fine. Before Bin Laden had been killed, and he goes and visits Bin Laden as an old man. So presumably in this world, Bin Laden escapes and manages to live out his life. And says hey, you guys had a bunch of suicide bombers and stuff. Can I use you guys as pilots? And he says that no, because we lived on hate, and we don't have that hate anymore, because we know that the West is going to be destroyed when everything else is destroyed. Anyway, so Tyler. This is Tyler's plan. He sort of has some stumbling blocks, and then so the ETO still exists, the Earth Trisolaran organization that is working on the side of the Trisolarans and trying to get humanity wiped out. They create these people called wall breakers, whose sole plan whose sole purpose it is to find out what the wall facers are up to. So Tyler has a wall breaker, who does end up breaking him, and he reveals that they've determined that Tyler's plan is to have all these ships, but to have them run by members of the ETO, and to have these ships attack and destroy the Earth fleet once the Trisolaran fleet arrives, and the defect to the Trisolaran fleet, and to go to the various moons and planets of the solar system and gather a whole bunch of ice, because the Trisolarans will need lots of water to rehydrate, because that's biologically they dehydrate and rehydrate, so they'll need lots of water. And so all these little ships will bring a whole bunch of water to the main fleet, and once they're close to the main fleet, Tyler will then take control of the fleet automatically and use each of the fleets, or each of the tiny little fighter jets, space fighter jets, which are equipped with nukes, and ram them into the Trisolaran fleet, destroying it. And it's explained why the guy figured this out, and Tyler's kind of shocked. And the plan goes public, because that's what the Wallbreaker does, is doesn't doesn't do anything other than reveal the plan to the public, and then the public sort of tears Tyler apart. They're like, "How dare you try and you wanted to use your idea to destroy the fleet that we would have, and it's like a crime against humanity and blah blah blah." But he was doing it ostensibly to save humanity, so sacrificing in order to save. But anyways, because his plan's been revealed, he commits suicide. The next guy is Ray Diaz, whose sole plan is to build the biggest nuke ever, like just this massive bomb. So he puts all his resources into building giant nukes, and he also wants to store them on Mercury. The test one, he's like, we need to drill deep into Mercury and drop the bomb inside, and that's where our test will be for this stellar bomb, which will blow a massive crater in Mercury that we can use to store all of these bombs for when we'll need them. And it seems like on the outside that he just wants to make big bombs, because big bombs are big good and they can help you in the war. But his wall breaker reveals that no, we know that what you actually plan on doing is igniting all the bombs that are stored on Mercury, and he'll have so many and so many big bombs that it will knock Mercury out of its orbit, so Mercury will fall into the sun. When Mercury collides with the sun, there'll be a massive explosion which will rock the solar system, causing all planets to lose orbit, or all the planets' orbits to be destabilized, and eventually, one after the other, the planets will continue to fall into the sun until the entire solar system is destroyed. And so his plan is to threaten to do that unless the Trisolarans go away. And once again, all the Wallbreaker has to do is reveal this plan to the public, and they're outraged. Like, this is even worse than Tyler's plan. You wanted to destroy not just all humanity, but the entire planet and the entire solar system. Holy cow, man. This is bad. So Diaz, he has this really sad scene where he goes back to his Venezuela. I think he was the president of Venezuela at one point. He goes back there to the statue of this great some great person in Venezuelan history, and he's stoned to death by the public. So that deals with two of the wall breakers. The third one is this guy Bill Hines, who he's like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, the other guys are building giant bombs and fighter jets and whatnot. It's like, how about I just work on, because I'm a psychologist, I'll work on the brain. We'll just try and find a way to increase human intelligence, and that way we'll be able to get smarter, and then we'll have a better idea of how to defeat the Trisolarans. And it seems great. He goes into hibernation. So hibernation technology exists in this world, so people can, because there's a 450-year gap between the time that the fleet left and the time that the fleet's arriving, people can hibernate to sort of get closer to the time when the fleet arrives. So Bill Hines, he sort of skipped ahead 5 years, and computer technology had advanced enough, although Moore's law had sort of fallen apart, but they did advance enough that he did create this massive supercomputer to study the brain. Through the process of studying the brain, he discovers something he calls the mental seal, which can imprint something on the human brain that will make the person believe something wholeheartedly, even if there's total evidence to the contrary. Even if it's totally illogical, the person will believe it no matter what. And the example is that when someone happens to it creates in them a fear of water. They won't even drink water, even though they know there's nothing wrong with water and they need it to live. They have this massive fear of water. And so ostensibly he's like, well, we can use this technology to imprint on everyone the idea that we will be victorious in our battle with Trisolaris, and that will give everyone faith, so that everyone will be working towards the goal of survival and defeat of the Trisolarans, because they know it's possible and it's guaranteed, or something like that. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of defeatism and escapism in the world at this time. A lot of people are sort of thinking maybe we should build a fleet of ships and flee the solar system in order to preserve humanity. But that sort of talk becomes anathema and put the kibosh on, and nobody dares suggest defeatism or escapism, as they call it. So in order to sort of fix this problem, Heinz's idea is create this mental seal to give people total faith in humanity and their ability to destroy the Trisolarans. But much later on in the book, 200 years into the future, his wife is his wall breaker, and she reveals that I figured it out that actually your idea was to implant the opposite idea into everyone and to tell everyone, have everyone believe that there's no possible way to defeat Trisolaris and that we're doomed, in order to get humanity on the side of escapism so that they can construct a fleet and flee. Because if everyone's on the same side and everyone agrees to that, then at least humanity will be preserved, even though Earth will not. And then the fourth and final wallbreaker, Luo Ji, who's sort of the main character of this book. He's shocked when he's appointed wall facer. I'm gonna get those two terms mixed up. And he immediately says, I resign, I don't accept this post, I don't want it at all. And everyone's like, yes, it's all part of the plan, okay, sure. You're no longer a wall facer, yes, definitely. But they still give him all kinds of security and stuff. And it turns out that Trisolaris had tried to kill him before he became a wall facer, and nobody really knew why. But that was the reason they made him a wall facer, is because Trisolaris wants him dead for some reason, so he must be important, so we'll make him a wall facer. He tried to deny it, but he soon realized that, they think it's all part of the plan and I still have this unlimited power. So he sort of dreams up his ideal estate in his ideal environment and gets this sort of estate in Northern Europe somewhere by a lake, and he sort of lives a life of ease for a few years. Dashi, the character from the first book, the police officer, he's in this book too. I really like this character. He's in charge of security for Luo Ji, and Luo Ji, he talks about how he created this woman. It's a really neat story, but it feels like it's like a very long sort of intermission story. So back when he was in college, he was dating this author or this writer, and they were talking about literature and how to create characters and whatnot. And so Luo Ji wanted to was going to write a book for his girlfriend because that's what she wanted for her birthday. But in doing so, he sort of created this character that it was this idealized woman, and he fell in love with this character. And he sort of saw this character and was be with this character, even though this person was not real. He was truly in love with her. So back in the present, gets Dashi to do a police sketch of this woman, and he's like, explains all the sort of background details of her personality, her upbringing, what she looks like, everything. And he's like, find this woman for me. And so, of course, with 8 billion people in the world, they go out and they find a girl who suits his desires, and he spends time, he ostensibly hires her, but there's a bit of a time skip, and a few years later they're married and they have a kid together, and it's at this point that the UN and the public start getting upset with Luo Ji. They're like, you're not doing anything, you're just wasting resources, you're not actually being a wall facer. And the big break comes when his wife takes his daughter, and they both go into hibernation. They say we'll be awakened at doomsday in 450 years, and so that's when it's revealed that yes, Luo Ji, you've been chosen a wall facer because for whatever reason Trisolaris wants you dead. And he starts thinking back, why would they want me dead? And then he remembers this conversation he had about cosmic sociology, and now that aliens are known to exist, cosmic sociology could have significant consequences. And so he starts thinking, and he almost blurts it out, but he's like, no, I'm actually a wall facer, I'll keep it in. And so he comes up with this plan to cast a spell on a star, is how the characters describe it. But he transmits something, he transmits the coordinates of a nearby star, using the sun as an antenna, much like they did in the first book. and it's going to take like 100 years or 50 years for the signal to reach that star, and then 100 years for that light to come back to Earth, or sorry, 50 years for that light to come back to Earth to see if anything happens. So there's like a 100-year time lag, and because the book's called The Dark Forest, I kind of figured what was happening at this point. Interesting that the Dark Forest hypothesis is named after this book. So it wasn't this the author's original idea, but I think he's played a significant part in popularizing it and expanding upon it, which I think is really cool. But yes, what he had done is basically let the entire galaxy know that, hey, there's a planet right here, and obviously it must be linked to intelligent life, because it would take an intelligence to communicate to the universe that this star exists. So he casts his spell, and as soon as he does, this probe, a series of probes can be seen being launched from the fleet towards Earth, and these probes are going to reach Earth in 200 years, way sooner than the rest of the fleet. And one specifically is like really speeding and is going to get there first. But yeah, it's important that these probes were launched right after he sent his signal out to the sun. So then he goes into hibernation because he's like, well, I've done part of my plan. I need to wait until we find out what happens. So that's when we enter the second era of the book, where he wakes up 200 years in the future, in the 23rd century, and it's like a shocking utopia. Like the Trisolaran fleet is still coming, but everyone believes now that there's no way the fleet can win. Like, humanity's definitely going to win this, because humanity has itself a 2,000 ship fleet, like twice the size of the Trisolaran fleet. Politics has changed so much that there's only like 3 nation states on Earth, like the North American ocean state, the Asian state, and the European state. For some reason, Africa is totally left out of this political arrangement. And the fleets themselves are nation states. So there's like the North American fleet, the Asian fleet, and the European fleet, who are independent nations. And you are citizens of a fleet or of Earth. There are two different. There's the Earth International and Fleet International, 2 international organizations. And anyways, humanity's advanced. Of course, science has not advanced because of the Sophon, but technology has still advanced based on previously done science. So it seems like a utopia. He's woken up from hibernation underground in this massive underground Beijing. The surface isn't lived on anymore. People still live up there, but something called the Great Ravine happened, where humanity almost collapsed, but managed to rebound. And it was because people had been spending too much time and effort and resources on trying to defeat the Trisolarans that the standard of living decreased significantly. Starvation occurred. Billions died. But once they got through the other side of this Great Ravine, they're like, well, actually, we should focus all of our economic efforts on living in the present and focusing on supporting us now instead of looking at the future. And so humanity sort of rebuilt itself, and then once they did, they're like, okay, now we have excess resources, we can think about the Trisolaran fleet, who's still on its way. And so that's why they built their own fleet and whatnot. But it seems the mood's very, very optimistic, like, yes, we're definitely going to win this fight. So then this probe arrives, and this is the part where I'm like, okay, this is really stupid. So the probe arrives, and people are like, they know they're not going to win, right? The Trisolarans aren't going to win. So the probe must be like here for negotiations or as a symbol of peace or something. So they send out the entire 2,000 ship fleet to go and meet this probe. And they all stay at a certain distance in case it explodes, and they calculate the possible blast radius, and they make sure they're far away and safe. But all the different fleets and nations want to make sure that they are there for this historic moment. So the whole freaking fleets, everything goes, which I'm like, this is so dumb. And of course, the probe, it turns out it is a totally reflective thing. It is unpenetrable. It is made out of a material that is like super solid and unable to break. The technology is so much higher than that of Earth, and it's very fast too. So what it does, this probe, it's about the size of a truck. It just goes, all the ships are lined up in a big grid, all 2,000 ships, and it just goes right through one and the other, just like pew 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 pew, right through the fuel cells and the engines and everything, and blows up ship after ship after ship after ship after ship. Boom 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 boom, blows up all 2,000 ships. Just completely destroys the fleets of humanity in about 20 minutes. There are a number of ships that managed to get away, and by a number I mean like 6. But yes, so these ships, a few ships manage to escape. The probe goes to Earth and sets up in orbit around Earth and sends out an electromagnetic signal that blocks any transmissions into the sun, so they can no longer cast a spell as Luoji had done. The sun's been blocked off, and yeah, so humanity's very distraught. Obviously, this is when they first notice that, hey, that star that Luoji cast a spell on has exploded. It's gone. It was totally annihilated. They're like, how did he blow up a sun? So he sort of becomes a messiah figure at this point. And so he regains his wall facer status and is given, but they don't really know what they can do at this point. So they create this task where they're going to scoop up this oil film thing from Neptune and have a bunch of bombs full of this oil stuff that are going to explode all around the sun, which will create a big barrier of oil around the sun, so that any ships that come into it can easily be detected, so they can see where the Trisolaran fleet comes from in case they try and spread out and get around. And so Luoji devotes himself fully to this task, but everyone sort of sees this isn't a wall breaker project or a wall facer project anymore. This is just something that they're doing to keep him busy, and it's not really going to prevent anything. And eventually it's revealed that they don't have enough bombs or oil to create a sort of a dome around the solar system. They can just do it in certain spots, and it's not really going to be effective. And so they're like, okay, we got to stop this. And they decide to expel Luoji from his house. Because he's just wasting time and resources and causing too much reporters and protesters and stuff. They're like, we just need to get him out of the neighborhood. So they go to his house, and he's there's just debris and garbage everywhere, and they said it looks like a drug addict's den, and there's alcohol and cigarettes, and he's just he's laying in the corner, and they think he's dead, but he's actually still alive, and they're like, you got to get out of here, man. He's like, yeah, fine, whatever. So he gets up and he goes to leave. And this is right near the end of the book, and it seems super, super dejected. And he goes out to the grave of Yang Dong, where the prologue took place, and the grave of Yi Wenji is right next to her. And so he starts digging his own grave. And after he digs his own grave, he passes out for the night, and then he wakes up and he pulls out a loaded pistol, and then he's like, I'm now addressing Trisolaris. Because presumably the Sophons are still around and they're still looking at him. And so he reveals the final stage of his Wallbreaker or Wallfacer Plan 2.0, which was even kept from the reader myself for the whole time, and I didn't anticipate it. But he's like, as soon as I die, when my heart stops beating, a signal will be sent out that will cause the detonation of all those stellar bombs with the oil film in them all across the solar system. And he's like, the film will block out the sun to a degree that because I've placed them in such a certain arrangement that it will be like a sort of a lighthouse effect where a signal will be sent out from our solar system revealing our exact location to the entire galaxy. And basically that was his workaround. Since they couldn't use the sun as an antenna, he set this whole thing up. So he's basically like, if I die, the galaxy will know where Earth is, where Trisolaris is, where the fleet is, and we're all going to die. So it's very similar to Ray Diaz's plan to sort of destroy the solar system, hold it hostage. And so that's what Luoji does. And immediately Sophons contact him and are like, wait, stop, what are your terms? And he's like, turn your fleet around, turn the probes around, do not come to Earth. And they're like, okay, we did it. What's next? And he's like, all right, you're going to need to turn off that probe so that we can use the sun as an antenna if we want. They're like, okay, done. We did that too. It's like, all right, so you're also going to negotiate with Earth a truce. You're also going to help us advance in terms of science and technology. You're also going to help us build a giant antenna using gravity waves so that we can easily send a signal into the sun and reveal the location of all of us. And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. Which seems kind of like sudden that they just give in to his demands, but also they're a different alien species, so they're going to act differently. And this is an existential crisis for them. Um, and so it sort of ends with an uneasy peace, sort of a, I don't know if it's a Cold War state at this point, but it is very much peace because of mutually assured destruction. The only reason they want to kill each other, but they know that if they try, both of them will end up being destroyed. And it ends with a chat between one of the Trisolarans who doesn't want to destroy humanity and Luoji, and them sort of talking about love and how love has been suppressed in the Trisolarans because it wasn't seen as beneficial to survival. Just brutality was seen as more advantageous in this brutal universe, and so it ended on a hopeful note that they hope that to help communicate between species and help stop this dark forest hypothesis, which I totally haven't talked about yet, but it ended on a positive note. So the major thing I left out is the whole dark forest hypothesis, and also this other character named I want to say Zhang Beihe, who was a military guy, and honestly, like more of a wall facer than any of the other wall facers. Like even though he wasn't a wall facer, Zhang Beihe. So he was a guy who his whole thing was he was a political officer in the military, and he kept saying how convinced he was that humanity's going to win. He's like, we're guaranteed we're going to win, even like way back when they thought they weren't going to win. And he killed a number of people in order to, it made it look like an accident in order to sort of push history in one way so that spaceships were developed that had interstellar capabilities. And then he sort of hibernated and then woke up 200 years into the future and managed to get control of one of the starships in the fleet right before the fleet was destroyed. And I won't go into the details, but he takes the ship and he because he has total control over it, he flies it out into interstellar space, and a number of ships are sent to chase after him. And as he does this, that's when the humanity's fleet gets destroyed, and so he's like, haha, I knew it. So it turns out he was a defeatist and an escapist this whole time, and his plan was to hijack a ship and manage to save a portion of humanity. And as they are leaving, the ships, I think there's about 5 ships that are currently leaving Earth. They've cut all ties with Earth, and they're like, we need a new political structure, and we're going to need a new morality because things are going to be different out here. And they do a bunch of calculations, and they're like, we do not have enough fuel to get that far. The ships weren't loaded up when we left. And so they do some rough calculations, and they're like, if we take all of the fuel from all of the ships and consolidate it into one ship, then we'll be able to survive. However, we can't take on all the people onto one ship, so we're going to have to... So there's all this cold calculation that basically the ships are going to have to destroy each other because only one will be able to survive. And so the ship finally comes to that conclusion. Zhang Beihe and the other captains and vice captains of the ship come to that conclusion that we have to destroy the other ships in order to survive. But as they're making that decision, they're about 30 seconds late. All of the other ships also come to that conclusion. And so there's a big battle called the Battle of Darkness, where these last remaining battleships of Earth all fire on each other. And they're all destroyed except for one. Not destroyed, but everyone's killed and they're incapacitated except for one ship, which then goes and siphons the fuel from all of them takes all the spare parts from all of them and straps them to it, and creates this one ship, and that which then flees off into interstellar space. And that is sort of that the Battle of Darkness. That is the universe in microcosm, and that explains this whole cosmic sociology dark forest phenomenon that Luoji had figured out. He explains it to Dashi at one point, where he, like, after he had cast the spell on that star and it had been destroyed, he said that based on those axioms, just a second, I have them written down here, but it's that humanity, life expands exponentially. Life will always continue to grow and to grow, but there are finite resources in the universe. And also technological explosions can happen at any time. So if you come across one society that is very primitive and they don't seem like a threat to you, just look at what Earth accomplished from the Industrial Revolution to the Information Age and the Space Age within like 200 years. Because of the vast distances of space, if you see someone who's 300 light years away, they are 300 years more advanced than you are currently seeing them. So even if you see someone that doesn't look like a threat, you can't assume they're not a threat, because they may be a threat. And also, this thing called the chain of suspicion, where, because again, the vast distances of space, communication's very, very slow. So with humanity on Earth, we can communicate and see each other and visually take in each other and build trust and understanding and work together. In space, the distances are too vast. Communication's way too difficult to do that. So you never actually know what the other is thinking. So you can either be benevolent or malevolent. So benevolent meaning good and you're not going to hurt anyone. Malevolent meaning your intentions are evil and you want to destroy others. And he said even if two species encounter each other and they're both benevolent, the chain of suspicion means that because it is an existential threat, they cannot assume that the other is actually benevolent, even if they seem benevolent, because they, even if they are benevolent, might be thinking that the other one, which seems benevolent, might not actually be benevolent. And it's a chain that goes back and forth that, well, I think that you think that I think that we, and it just goes back and forth and sort of all the way down, that the only way to ensure survival is to assume that the other is malevolent and to strike first and to destroy them. And that's sort of the dark forest hypothesis in a nutshell. So the universe is a forest teeming with life, but it is dark and quiet, because anyone makes any noise and makes their presence known, even if I think they said like 800,000 species get this message and ignore it, and let's say 200,000 species investigate it and then leave it alone, there will always be at least one, because of the vast size of the universe, there will always be one species that strikes and destroys anything that reveals itself. So that's why the forest is dark and the universe is dark and quiet, is because to say anything, to make any noise, to make yourself appear at all, is to invite death. And that's the explanation to the Fermi paradox, that is basically that the universe is so big and so vast, why don't we see it full of life? Yeah, and that's what Luoji in this book figured out, and he that's why he cast his spell. He put the coordinates of this star out to the galaxy, and that star was destroyed, which confirmed it. And so that's what he threatened to do at the end of the book, to reveal the location of Earth and Trisolaris to the universe and have them both destroyed. Yeah, and I thought it was really, really cool. Like the cosmic sociology, the dark forest hypothesis, it makes so much sense, and it's so well explained in a fictional environment. Yeah, I really did enjoy this book. It did take me a while to get through, and it is quite a bit bigger, but it was a lot different than not a lot different, but it was different from the first one, and I'm excited to see how the third one is, if it's more continuing of this or if it's vastly different. Yeah, it was really good, really good. Just very philosophical, very like, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to like, what is our goals as a species? What is morality? What is right and wrong? So much in this book. Anyway, so that was The Dark Forest by Cixin Lui.